Opinions expressed on ACB Media are those of the respective program contributors and cannot be assumed to serve as endorsements of products or views by the American Council of the Blind, its elected officials, or its staff.
Hello, and welcome to Cooking with the Blind Kitchen. My name is Deborah Erickson, and I am the executive chef and founder of the Blind Kitchen. I myself am blind. I have retinitis pigmentosa, and I was the only blind student in culinary school. So I had to learn to solve a lot of problems. And as I came up with these solutions, of course, culinary school is very demanding, and I didn't have time to really write them all down or organize them or anything like that. But after COVID came, now I had all kinds of time. I was teaching at the Oregon Commission for the Blind. I teaching adults meal prep lessons, and so I had a lot of time, and that's where the Blind Kitchen came from. It's where I organized the strategies, tools, and information I'd gathered from all over different sources, from books, from podcasts, from YouTube videos. There were little gems hidden in so many different places, but it wasn't organized. And that's what the Blind Kitchen is all about. It's about organizing tools, tips, and strategies for people who have vision loss, who want to cook safely and confidently. And who better than a blind person who can evaluate these things to put those out. So you'll find more information that is free to you on theblindkitchen.com than tools that are for sale. So know that there's a place for everyone there. So I would like this very much to be an interactive discussion. We're going to be together for about 45 or 50 minutes, and I don't want to hear myself talk that long, and I'm sure you don't want to hear it either. So I will start out with a just something that I've found as an instructor and as an entrepreneur that does presentations, that people come to me often, different levels of cooking experience, different levels of vision, but the three most common fears are, of course, fear of cutting yourself, then fear of burning yourself, and then the third one is fear of embarrassing yourself, either because you are a messy cook, or you can think you might look messy to other people if you accidentally spill stuff, and the other thing is embarrassment of how the food looks. If you can't see it and other people can, there's always that, what are they looking at? Or does it look okay? So that's another fear. But I'm here to tell you that there are tools and techniques out there to help you overcome any of those fears. Now, we can't do everything. At least I can't. I can't devein a shrimp. I totally ruin it when I try to do that. So a strategy around that is to buy shrimp that's already deveined. I do what I can, and then there's other tips and strategies to help make it easier. Now, I'll start with what is really another fourth fear, and that is fear of making your friends or family sick because you serve them undercooked food. And that has more to do with poultry, where the fear is around it. And beef isn't as dangerous as undercooked poultry. For example, you can get a steak well done, or you can get a steak that's medium rare, and you're not going to get sick from eating if it's been prepared and stored properly. But you're never going to get medium rare chicken. It's not a thing because it's dangerous to consume it. So the first tool I'm going to talk about is a talking thermometer. And that's just what it sounds like. It's a thermometer that it does have visual information if you are able to access that. But for the blind community, I have found that being able to press a button and hear the information is so much better. So a lot of recipes will say, oh, cook the chicken until the juices run clear or until it's no longer pink in the middle. And if you don't have access to that information, the talking thermometer helps. The other thing about even vision strain is exhausting, absolutely exhausting. And if I do have some of vision available to me and I'm bending over near that turkey where the thermometer probe is in, and I am straining to look and see what's on the digital display that exists, first of all, my posture's real bad, but worse, my nose is there. My eyes are near this hot food now. My mouth, my hair, it's just not a good plan. So if you get a talking thermometer, talk about being embarrassed at how you look when you're cooking or whatever. That's a simple tool just to be able to press a button, get the information through your ears, and you can proceed. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yep, it sounds good.
Oh, good, good.
They're
So
all
that,
trained to stay muted until it's time to talk.
oh, okay. I'll finish up the other couple of ones and then I'll ask you to unmute
Sure.
or raise hands or
Yeah,
however you
raised
do it.
hands. We do raised hands.
Okay. So I'll talk about now we're going to talk about the fear of cutting yourself. So it's a very real fear, and even people with perfect vision cut themselves. Let's be realistic, but there are tools out there to help make it less possible. And if I were questioned in a court and they said who cuts themselves more, people that have some vision or people that have no vision, the answer would be the latter. And people with vision often get distracted. So that's why you have cooks with perfectly good vision that cut themselves. But there are some tools, and I'm going to tell you about one of them. The first one is called a cut glove, and it's a relatively thin glove you only wear one of them on the hand that is holding the food to be cut. It's relatively thin. It's a weave of materials. It's not thin enough to read braille through it, but it's not like a thick hot pad. It's relatively thin and stretchy. And what you do, and I do this in presentations all the time. I'll put my hand palm up towards the ceiling, and I'll be wearing the glove on that hand, and then I'll take my sharp, very sharp chef knife, and I'll run it back and forth across the palm of my gloved hand. I can feel the pressure. I can feel the movement. I know something's going on there, but it can't cut through the glove. Now, so the hand holding the knife is the hand that's really not in danger unless the knife slips or something like that. But in theory, you're holding the handle with your three fingers and you're pinching the base of the spine of that knife. And so those fingers are safe, but the hand holding the food is not safe. So let's say I'm cutting, let's say a carrot into coins. So I'm cutting, I'm cutting, I'm cutting, I'm cutting. And all of a sudden I feel pressure on that hand holding that carrot when I don't expect to feel it. I'm just going to stop. I mean, but if I had not been wearing that glove, by the time my brain would have received the information, something's wrong, the nerves are going to your brain saying, oh, there's pain, I'd already be cut. But what that cut glove does is it gives me an extra second and layer of protection to stop the blade because it can't cut my skin. The other place where it is absolutely valuable is when you are doing things like grating. I don't know of any cook, regardless of their vision level, that has not left their knuckle skin in carrots or shredding cheese or shredding potatoes. Box graters are weird. They're very helpful, especially for the blind community, and I can talk about that later if people are interested. But when you are grating, you've got those four angled walls and a whole bunch of different kinds of blades, and you're holding the food, the cheese, let's say, and you're going down, 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 and all of a sudden you feel a snag on those finger holding the food when you don't expect to feel it. You didn't know you were that close to it, or perhaps only one part of your fingers is that close to it. All you're going to do is stop, but your hand will not have been hurt. It's a absolutely wonderful tool. And a lot of people actually buy them for beginning cooks, which can often be children. And those give parents peace of mind that until the child learns the motor muscle memory and stuff. So I'm going to put something else out here. most of the tools in the blind kitchen are not made for the blind or visually impaired. But because of my cooking experience with vision loss, I'm able to reimagine some things. And I'm kind of the America's test kitchen of kitchen tools. I have an avocado slicer. That's one of the highest ER food related emergencies in the United States. People cutting through the avocado because you're holding this piece of fruit in your hand and you're pressing, you got to press pretty hard with that paring knife to get it to break the skin. The skin is quite protective of it. But then as soon as it releases, whoosh, that knife's going to go all the way through and you're not going to have time to stop pushing as hard because it happens so quickly after you break the skin. So I probably bought 15 avocado tools from different places. And some of them actually looked like torture devices. They were so unsafe, it was crazy. And others were, your fingers are so, we need our fingers to be near the action. We don't want them to be in the food, but we do want to be close to the food so that we have a better idea what's going on. And the avocado tool lets you do that. A brief description. It's made out of stainless steel, so it's easy to clean and will never rust or stain. It's shaped like roughly like a triangle. And on one side, the long side of that triangle, is a serrated edge, and it is slightly serrated, and it's sharp enough to cut through the skin of the avocado, but not sharp enough to cut your fingers. On the tip of that triangle, it's like an elongated triangle. There's a little curve at the tip of that triangle, and it has jagged stainless steel teeth. Again, they aren't sharp enough to cut your skin unless you really tried. I suppose you could, but they're not sharp enough to cut your skin, but they are sharp enough to get under that seed so you can dislodge it easily. And then the third side of that tool is slightly curved so that when I want to go and get the flesh of the avocado out of the skin, it slides under there beautifully and lets me get it out without me having to worry about the tip of a knife. Where is it at? Where are the blades of the knife? This is a thing that can't cut me, but it can do that task efficiently. So that's one of the things about the tools and techniques we selected is how what is the best model for blind people or visually impaired. So those are a couple of things that have to do with cutting. So now let's go to heat, a very real concern. If your heart didn't race when you were learning how to cook and you were putting something in and out of the oven, you probably weren't going to survive very long because you are in danger. But there are ways to manage that. So the other thing we have on the Blind Kitchen are things like video tutorials and written blog posts that talk about like how can you know if your pan is centered on top of the stove. And I'll give you, so this is not associated with the tool. This is just technique that I and specialized information. If your pan is on the stove, and I don't care if this is glass, if it's electric with a coil, if it's a flat ceramic top, this technique works for all types of stoves tops. If your pan is centered above the heating element, wherever that is, you can know for sure if it is or it isn't by this one little gem of information. You can touch the top of a hot pan. I'm talking about the hot, clean rim of a pot or a pan for just a second. And I'm saying tap, touch it for just a second and pull it away. You are not going to get burned. You'll know it's hot for sure, but if you pull it away quickly enough, it's not going to have time to burn your hand. The air will immediately start to cool your fingers. You can't touch hot liquid in a pan or hot food in a pan because when you make contact with that whatever it's in there, the food's going to come back with your finger, at least a layer of it, and it's going to continue to burn until the air has time to cool it. But you don't have to worry about that because you're not going to touch the food in the pan. You're just going to touch the rim of a pan. And so you're just going to take your finger and you're going to go all the way around the tip of the pan, maybe at 2 o'clock, maybe at 4 o'clock, maybe at 8 o'clock. And what you're checking for with those little taps is is it equally hot all the way around? Because if it is off center at all, the heat now will not be trapped under the bottom of the pan, the heat source where it's supposed to be. If it's off center, now that heat has the ability to climb the side of the pan. And that is going to make the top rim of that pan hotter than if the heating element were underneath it. So now let's go back to the same thing. Let's say I'm tapping, I'm tapping, I'm tapping. And now all of a sudden at 10 o'clock, it feels significantly hotter than 2 o'clock or 6 o'clock. What I will know is that pan is now off center. And so now what I have to do with that information is just gently nudge the pan just a little bit and then give it another minute or two and then check again. Is it, oh yeah, it's still hotter. I didn't get it right. And then you push it back again. And now, okay, it's equal all the way around. And so that is when I'm cooking on my stovetop, that's what I'm doing most of the time. I tend to not go very far from my stove. I need to be there to smell. I need to be there to hear. I'm more comfortable being right there. Some people might be comfortable going in the other room or whatever. It's not my comfort zone. So most of my time is spent tapping the top rim of the pan I'm cooking with. So that is one technique that is helpful. So another tool that we have in the blind kitchen that deals with protection from heat is they're called heat gloves. And in the 70s, they were marketed as of gloves, but they are crazy expensive. And there are a lot of good knockoff brands out there now. So we call ours the heat gloves, and they are two gloves that are literally gloves. They have 4 fingers and a thumb, which give us more tactile flexibility. Now, traditional quilted oven pads and mitts provide excellent protection against heat. They're usually 4, 5, 6 layers of cotton that are quilted together, and you're not going to get burned if you use them properly. What they don't offer, though, is any tactile. You've got this bulky thing. You might as well have a dish towel in your hands, trying to hold this up. What the heat gloves, they only have 2 layers of cotton, and that is not enough to protect your hands from the heat to get enough time to get a hot pan moved from one burner to another. Let's say that cotton is not going to be thick enough. But what makes them so great is they are covered with silicone designs front and back. So they're ambidextrous. You can wear them on either hand. And silicone does protect you against heat. That you can cook biscuits and stuff in silicone in an oven. I think it goes up to like 480 degrees or something. So silicone is a good thing for protection against heat. But the other thing that I think make them so blind friendly is that first of all, I can spread my fingers. I can adjust if I need to get a further behind the pan, I can pick the glove up and put it down and get it underneath. So I've got much more flexibilities than if I'm working behind a square hot pad or if my 4 fingers are trapped in the cavity of a quilted mitt. The other thing is they offer non-skid properties. If your pan is not oily on the outside, literally it's kind of hard to move your fingers. That silicone sticks to the stainless steel or whatever your metal your pan is made of. So it's a much safer thing for us to go ahead and lift up with. We first of all make sure our hands are firmly on the pan, and you push inward like we do to lift it up, and you are not going to be able to slide your hands up and down on the pan once you commit to it. It's a pretty cool design, I've got to say, ingenious. So that's a protection against heat. So let's now talk about a tool and a technique for embarrassment. Okay, so we can be embarrassed for all kinds of different ways. One, for unattractive presentations, or if we appear messy. that if we burn the food, there are all kinds of good ways to get embarrassed. And trust me, I've endured them all. I wouldn't have come up with this idea if I wasn't having challenges, as we all do. So I'll talk about the first one, kitchen organization, the kitchen and pantry organization. The one tool that I really can't do without in my kitchen is what we call the work tray. And what it is, you've seen them hundreds of times. They are cafeteria trays, school lunch trays, fast food trays where they're made out of plastic. They have a textured bottom. They're different sizes, but ours are 12 by 16. And the sides come up just a little ways. And what that does for me, let's say I'm measuring wet liquids, or I'm measuring dry food, or I'm cracking an egg. What if I accidentally miss the bowl when I'm cracking the egg? It happens to everybody. Instead of that egg, or if I'm pouring juice or something like that, if it accidentally spills or gets knocked over, it's instead of running across the counter, down the front of my cupboards, onto the floor, most likely it's going to be contained within the confines of that tray. So I would not do a lot of things without them, because even if I would go back to that carrot we were cutting, it carrot coins can roll. It's probably not going to roll off of my wooden cutting board onto the counter, onto the floor, and who knows where the heck it ends up at. So, so they're really good for that. And I use those work trays for cutting boards. I use them exclusively. I do have a wooden cutting board, with the flat edges where stuff can fall off, but I only use it as a trivet for large hot pans. I do not use the cutting boards anymore because of those edges. I find they're wonderful, and they're also really good for organizing. So let's say I'm going to make chocolate chip cookies. And there's nothing more frustrating than going to your refrigerator. You need 2 eggs. And don't get me started on eggs right now. Don't even get me started. But let's say you need 2 eggs. And there's only one in there. Your husband made his own breakfast the other day and you didn't realize it. We can't jump in the car and go to the store and get it. It's going to take the wind out of your sails if you're at that point in the recipe and now you can't continue without assistance. So what you're going to do is I get the 2 eggs out of the refrigerator. I get whatever butter I need, the chocolate chips I need, the baking powder, baking soda, flour. Within reason, I want all of the ingredients that I will need for that recipe, and I will put them on a separate work tray. And so I have multiple work trays in my kitchen. So then that helps keep me organized. Those are over there on that tray. So as I use them, it also helps keep me clean, because I'm going to clean as I go. Okay. I opened the butter. It's in the bottom of the pan. I'm going to get rid of the wrappers. We're good. Crack the eggs, put the shells in the scraps bowl. Now I'm emptying that tray as I'm going through all the ingredients. And let's say now I've mixed it up, I've put in the chocolate chips. Now I'm getting ready to use a portion scoop to form them. Portion scoops are your friends. They're like ice cream scoops of different sizes, but it makes sure each cookie is the same size or the same amount. So I reach over, I expect that tray to be cleaned off because everything's in there, and there's the vanilla. I forgot to put the vanilla in. This offers me a second chance because I just can't glance and see what's on that tray. But I'm going to make that part of my cooking experience, is to reach over there. Now I have a second chance to add that vanilla. So those work trays come in very, very handy for all different kinds of reasons. Now, another place they come in is, like, let's say you're fabricating a chicken or seasoning raw chicken, and you've touched it. Now your fingers are messed up. You've got that chicken juice, which can grow harmful bacteria at very high temperatures. You can now, all of that stuff is contained within one of those work trays. And if I don't have time to cook with that work tray right now, if I want that chicken to just leave it alone for a while so I can move on to the next step, I can move it over to a different counter or my dining room table. And so that I'm not going to accidentally put a towel on it, or I'm not going to accidentally, spill it. I can move it up and safely out of my way until I'm ready to deal with it. So that leads me to one other strategy that I use every time I go to cook. I run a couple of inches of hot, soapy water in one of my sinks. Or if you have like one of the bigger sinks where it only has one, you can get any kind of a dish or something like that where you can. The idea is that if I'm seasoning that chicken and now I've got stuff on my fingers. If I have to use my hands to walk down the counter, to find the water controls, to make sure that the faucet is indeed over the sink, to get the soap dispenser to pump it. Now I've got to go back and decontaminated all of those. But if I have that sink of hot soapy water waiting for me, now I can just use the back of my hands or perhaps my forearms, and I don't have to touch anything. I just have to be able to find the sink and plunge my fingers into it. And now I can touch the water controls so I can rinse them. And the reason I only run a couple of inches is because I'm a slow cook. I'm sure there are many fast blind cooks out there. I am not one of them. And I'm not beating myself up. I just am slower. It just takes me longer. So there's nothing more gross than cold water to put your fingers into when you're cooking. So if I only have run about 3 inches, then I can come back and I reach in. I'm like, oh, this is colder than I like. Run a couple more inches of hot soapy water. I revise the suds, and now it's a comfortable temperature. So that's a good clue. And let's say like when I'm doing that vanilla, I've got my measuring cup, my funnel, my tea measuring spoon. I can now, after I empty it into the recipe, I can start cleanup. I can just put it in the water. So that's another tip for having to do with cleanliness and organization. Or that's the work trays and that. So I have talked long enough, I think. Um, if you have any questions or if you have anything to offer, I have learned so much from my students and also other people like you who have good ideas, and I can then use my platform to share those.
All right. Jeff has a question. Go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your knowledge with us. So I too have RP. I'm kind of a rookie cook in the house. Wife, 2 children that are older. They're all excellent cooks, very efficient. And if you're slow, I'm super slow. My question is couple, and it's around organization. What do you recommend for organizing and utilizing your kitchen when you have other active sighted members in your family? What's a good strategy for that? Now, I do have a section of cabinets where I have my stuff stored, but it's the kind of thing like if I'm going to do something, it's like I want to be the only one in the kitchen and just kind of like stay out of the way. Is that reasonable? And also, how do you organize all your different spices?
These are excellent questions, and that's a great strategy for, first of all, having, if your kitchen is large enough that you can have designated space, and anybody that reaches in there that isn't you gets their hand cut off. That's a really good strategy. But so you asked a couple of questions in there. Probably the most important thing, if you live in a house with sighted people, my husband is sighted, is we have something called sharps baskets that we sell in the Blind Kitchen. And what they are is basically extra long drawer organizers, like for pencils. But I think they're about 16 inches long, but about 2 inches wide and 2 inches high. And they have little rubber feet on the bottom. When I'm at my workspace and I've got anything sharp at that workspace, a knife, scissors, mini box grater, can opener perhaps, anything that I could possibly get cut on, it's in or near that sharps basket. I have another one on the back edge of my sink. So let's say I'm cutting up that chicken that we talked about earlier, and now the knife is dirty. I don't want to put it back in with the other utensils that I still plan to use. I can just put it at the back of that sink and now it's safely out of the way. But your family has to make that agreement with you that if the sharp tool is not in its storage place, the drawer or the knife block, however you do it, if it's not in your hand or their hand, then it's in either one or the other of those sharps baskets. So that's a calming thing. I know when I used to be able to see, I could look and see there was a sharp knife in the bottom of the sink. I can't anymore. I definitely couldn't see through soapy water if there was a knife in the bottom of the sink. So this is a good plan to help keep you safe and more organized. A couple of other things are like use lazy Susans. So those are little discs. Mine are about 10 inches because they fit into normal cabinets and they fit into my refrigerator and they rotate around. They're like on a ball bearing system where they can go in circles. So usually if I go to take a can out of a cupboard, it's always going to be in the back. And then I'm going to knock over 14 things as I try to pull it forward to get it out. But if you put these on a lazy Susan, now you can just very gently turn it. Anything in the back now is in the front and easy for you to grab. And it works the same in your refrigerator. Instead of trying to reach up and knocking things over, put your pickles, your pickle relish, your condiments on one of those in one place. That's like leftovers on the second left shelf of your refrigerator. You come up with different ways. And so then your family has to agree, hey, if there's leftovers, I know I'm going to find them on the second shelf on the left. In terms of spices, there are a lot of right answers to this. Labeling food and pantry items in your kitchen depends on several things. One is your budget. There are some really good ways out there, but they can be quite expensive. The other can be your comfort level with technology. Not all of us are good at it, but there are solutions that are absolutely ingenious for that. Um, some of the simpler ones, though, well, the other thing is a pen friend. I don't know if you've ever heard of this. We don't sell them. If you write to info@theblindkitchen.com, I can send you a link to it. And it's basically a big fat pen, but it's not a writing pen. It's an electronic device with a bunch of bottom buttons on it. And it comes with stickers. So the bottom line is you put a sticker on your jar of paprika and then you use that pen and you have to learn how to use it, but you record in your own voice. It'll say paprika. So every time I go back to that jar or any jar that I've labeled, I turn on the pen and all I have to do is touch the top of the lid with that pen or wherever I put that sticker. And the pen reads it to me, what's in it in my own voice. I don't have to open it or smell it. So in organizing spices, I'll give you one more strategy is to group like items together. So mine are in drawers, shallow drawers that are stand on my counter. They're meant to be desk organizers. But I slide out the drawer. The top drawer is my commonly used one. That's where you're going to find my paprika, my rosemary, my oregano, the things Italian seasoning, the things I often use. In the second drawer are spices that begin with the letter C. I know it's crazy. But there are so many spices that begin with the letter C. I found that they deserve their own home. And then, like, I have my dessert spices in a container in the drawer. So I know if I touch that little organizer box, all of those that are in that little section will have to do with dessert. And then I have others that are seasoning blends like Italian seasoning, taco seasoning, maybe herbs de Provence, uh, any blends that are already pre-made that you like. So those are some ideas on organizing, and there's a lot of other ones. If you go to the website, you can type in a search and maybe there's a blog post on it.
Very cool.
All right.
Thank you so
You're
much.
more than welcome.
And you have several hands. So, Lucy, you're next. And then we'll go to Clubhouse.
All right. Hi, Deborah.
Hi.
Hi. I have a question about talking thermometers. So when they first came out, talking kitchen thermometers, I was told that you had to like calibrate them by putting them in an ice bath. Is that still true?
It is still a thing because they're electronics.
Mhm.
Electronics can go wonky on you. So the only reason you would do that is if you suspected it wasn't accurate. And then you put them in an ice bath, and if it reads 0 degrees Celsius or 32 degrees Fahrenheit, you're going to know it's okay. And if you hold it with the tip of your finger and it gets to somewhere near 98, because that's what your finger is, or you could boil water if you wanted to get to 212. It's just the reason it's important to do that. And we had to do it in culinary school all the time. Because if you have food at the wrong temperature for too long, it can make people sick, or if you like with the chicken, if you undercook it. So it is important to calibrate it every once in a while, but most of us know if our thermometers are working or not. That answer your question?
Well, yeah, I just wondered if there was like a certain, like you should do it every month or every, I don't know. I mean,
What I would say is if you don't suspect there's a problem, and I'll tell you what, they non-talking thermometers need to be calibrated as well for
sure.
people that can see perfectly. I would do it probably every time I change the battery.
Oh,
Make it
okay.
a practice. I'm a real big fan of routines, just
Yeah,
so that
yeah.
I'm not guessing. Yeah,
Mm. Okay, great. Thanks.
you're more than welcome.
Cindy?
I think Cindy said she was going to turn it to Clubhouse.
Oh, okay. So Holly.
I don't know what that
Okay.
means.
So we do have someone in Clubhouse, and that's Haley. Haley, you can unmute.
Hello,
Hello.
Deborah. I'm so excited. I'm happiest when I'm in the kitchen, and I taught at our state um, training center in Seattle for a while. I taught home ec, so I'm so excited about this call.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, so for Jeff, I would say I live with two teenagers, and I have
I'm
10 in my
sorry.
house at any I have 10 in my house at any given time.
Oh, my
And
goodness.
so it's a discussion that I have with all of them on their first trip to my house. And it's like, look, if you have a drink while you're at my house and you use a glass, the area behind the cutting board is where the glasses go. If the dishwasher's clean, right? If the dishwasher's
Hmm.
dirty, then, please put it in there. But we have like a designated like you have with your sharps behind the sink, we do too. But, all the kids know when they come in that that's where the glasses go. Then there's not the risk of me knocking that glass over and breaking it. So I think setting those rules up, are good, is a good
Yes.
thing. I have my spices alphabetical on shelves that sort of go left to right.
Hmm.
And I take them out of the spice jars that they come in and put them in different jars. And then mine are done with Braille labels. But, if you're not a
Hmm.
Braille reader, you'd have to find some other way. And then as far as like cans in my pantry, what I do is I had my husband cut some long, thin pieces of wood, and so in my shelf that's my cans, I have like that long piece of wood that goes from front to back of that shelf. And the far right row is all tomato products. And I have like tomato written, in Braille at the front of that shelf. The next one might be all canned soups. The next one might be all canned fruits, so on and so forth. So I still have to use my tech, like my glasses or my seeing AI or something like that, to read the
Hmm.
can. But at least then I know when I put them away that all of the tomato products are, in one row and so on and so forth. So those are some of the tips that I do use. My question for you is, I notice on your website that you talk about a wide mouth funnel quite a bit.
Hmm.
And I was looking at your suggestions for measuring hot liquids or pouring out hot liquids, like, a cup of tea or, something like that. Do
Hmm.
you prefer like the liquid indicator, or are you using the wide mouth funnel in that way to pour out the hot liquids? If you could explain that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah.
And it's so
Well,
nice
no, I
to
haven't.
meet you. I'm so excited about this call.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I am too, by the way. So for people that haven't watched that video, it talks about tools and techniques to safely pour yourself a cup of hot tea or coffee, because believe me, if I'm pouring lemonade or hot tea, I don't want to put my finger over the rim of that cup so that I can figure it out. And some people are pretty good at listening to the noise as the liquid rises, but a lot of us aren't. So I use a combination of the liquid alert. So for people that don't know what that is, it's a cool device. It's about the size of a 9-volt battery. It's a plastic box that hangs on the outside of your cup, and then there are either 2 or 3 stiff wires that hang on the top of your cup. They're hanging over the rim of your cup, and they're inside the cup, about an inch from the top. And if you've got the 3 model one, it's about a half an inch from the top. And what it does is when the liquid touches those prongs that are hanging over, when the liquid gets high enough to touch it, it closes the circuit and it starts beeping. So you will know that you are getting near the top and you have to quit. So I'll give you the other technique. So that's what a liquid alert is. What a wide mouth funnel is a funnel that they use for canning. It's about the opening, instead of being just, 3/4 of an inch or an inch, as a standard funnel, the opening is about the size of like a mason jar. So it's going to be a much larger, it's going to let liquid go through it quicker because it's larger. And when people used them for canning, but we use them for a lot of different reasons. But I'll keep going on this one. So I put the liquid alert, hang it over the edge of the cup, and so it's waiting there for me. And then I put the wide mouth funnel on top of the cup so that any liquid I pour into that wide mouth funnel will be directed to the bottom. So I'm using both. So most mugs or coffee cups or teacups have about a 3-inch opening. I'm being general, but I think that's pretty average. So instead of trying to pour in that hot liquid, even if I have the liquid alert there, that's not a real big target when you're carrying a heavy pot of coffee or tea. But if you put the wide mouth funnel into the mouth of the cup, now you've got about a 5-inch target. So you've just increased your target. And so even if I don't get it exactly
I
right
love that.
over
I
the
love
center of the
that.
cup, yeah, it's going to
Perfect.
direct it right down.
Perfect. Thank
So
you.
you're welcome. So I'll give you another couple of things. If you do have contrast available to you, some people do, some don't. If you do have it, use it. I'm a big fan of using what you've got. So if I'm pouring that cup of hot coffee, coffee is dark, I'm going to use a white mug. If I'm pouring hot milk for maybe like hot chocolate or something like that, I'm going to use a dark cup because that's going to give me more visual information. The other thing I'm going to do, we'll go back to the coffee. We know I've got a white mug because I want that. I'm going to put it on a dark work tray. And in the Blind Kitchen, we send you a dark and a light colored work tray for just these kinds of circumstances. So now that coffee cup is going to stand out against that dark background for me and make it easier. Yeah, so those are some ideas, and those are more strategies that you can use.
All right, you have a few more hands, and I'm sorry I was having a little technical difficulty, but we are going to go now to Peggy.
Hello. Thanks, Deborah, for this. This is great. My question is, have you come up with any good way to measure like extracts? I have a terrible time like measuring a teaspoon of vanilla or something like that. Do you have any suggestions for that?
Oh, I do. Now, we did not invent, and I forget what her name was, but the woman from Seattle will know exactly what I'm talking about. We did not
Really?
invent this strategy, but what we do have is we've got dry measuring cups and dry measuring spoons, and they are different from our wet measuring cups and wet measuring spoons. The difference is they're all made of stainless steel. They all have tactile dots on them that aren't braille. You just have to be able to count to be able to use them. And the dots are part of the handle. They can't fall off. So let's say I'm looking for I want a half a teaspoon of vanilla. and I'm looking for it. So let's just stick with the teaspoons for now, the wet teaspoons.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to find the wet, I'm going to count the dots. I don't have to nest them or anything. I just have to be able to count. Oh, there it is. So I've got it. But what makes this so adaptive is the handle faces the ceiling like a ladle. So in our
Wow.
society, when we go to transfer soup, we're not going to use like a flat spoon and do it. It's going to take forever and it'll be messy. We just dip that ladle in there. The handle's going straight up and we can lift up. That's the same principle that we operate on. So with that, with the spoons, which are 4 standard measuring spoons, we send a small spouted pitcher and a special size funnel. And specifically, they work excellent with the extract bottles. That's what I was thinking of when I put this all together. So
Okay.
what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my work tray there. You bet I am, just in case I spill something.
Mm-hmm.
Vanilla's almost as expensive as eggs now.
Yeah.
But I am going to put that little plastic pitcher down there with the spout on it. And then I'm going to take that teaspoon and I am going to put it in there. And I've always said, if you're going to have vision loss, we should have been given an extra hand because I never have enough hands. So when this thing is in there, now it's standing up by itself, ready to receive liquid. I don't have to. And the old way of pouring a little bit of vanilla and then touching it and then pouring, you never really know when it's
No.
to the
Yeah.
top. We aren't, I don't anyway.
No.
So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take that little bottle of vanilla and I'm going to very mindfully put the lid where I'll be able to find it quickly when I need it again. And I'm going to pour the vanilla into that little spouted pitcher. It's about 2 inches high, about an inch around. And I'm going to make sure I overflow that cavity of that spoon. Not overflow the cup, but overflow the
Right.
cavity of the spoon. Then I'm going to move my target bowl, whatever recipe I'm making. I'm going to move it nearby, as near as I can, so I don't have to travel far with a thing of liquid. And I'm going to lift straight up, just like I talked about with the soup. And if I
Yep.
don't hear anything drop out, I know for sure that is a level teaspoon of vanilla because it
Mm-hmm.
has to be. It was just underwater or under vanilla. And so
Yeah.
then I go and I dump it into the recipe. I take the spoon and I put that in my waiting soapy water sink that we talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And now you may say, okay, you've got the right measurement. You haven't wasted or spilled anything yet, but you've still got that overflow. And that's where the funnel comes in. Instead of having that little 2-ounce bottle, that's about as big as your little pinky tip opening, now you put the funnel in and you've got about a 3-inch funnel, a 3-inch target to
Yep.
direct the vanilla that's left in the bottom of that spouted pitcher. And you find the spout and it makes it really easy. It makes it really quick. And now you have not wasted anything and you have an accurate measurement.
Oh, cool. Thank you. I'll have to look
Sure.
at that on your website. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you. Mm-hmm.
All right. And next up is I told you about Herbie. It's Herbie. He does
Oh, Herbie.
Herbie's community cooking corner or something to that effect.
Yep.
Is that what it's called? Herbie?
Herbie's Community Cooking Corner.
I did it right. Okay. It's your
You
turn.
did it right. Well, because the community represents that lately it's been a lot of the community members participating and facilitating the call, not just me. So I was curious about something that you were talking about early on because, first of all, I really like some of your tips, especially don't be afraid to buy, things that are like pre-cut or whatever because it can, save you time as well as, if you're not comfortable with a knife or whatever. But I noticed you then also mentioned grating things manually. And so I'm just curious, do you prefer to grate cheese manually as opposed to just buying the already shredded stuff and same with other things that you might grate? And so I'm just curious about I kind of noticed that.
Now, it depends. I have both blocks of cheese in my refrigerator at this moment, and I have pre-grated stuff. You're gonna want to use the pre-grated stuff is like shreds or whatever. They are good for convenience, I agree, but what keeps them from sticking together? Because if I were to grade a pound of Colby Jack cheese and put it in a bag for any length of time, it's going to smush together. That's what cheese does. It's going to try and reform itself sort of into a block. But the ones that come from the store don't. because they have a coating. Usually it's cornstarch or something like that. So it affects their meltability. So they're not going to melt as good because they have a coating on them that's not going to make. So it depends on what your purpose is. I think there's a place for them for sure, but if you're wanting to have a nice cheese pool off of your Mexican lasagna or something like that, it's much better to use fresh grated. The only one of the only difference from this is the hard cheeses like Parmesan, that they're really dry and they're like more powdery when they're done.
Right.
They don't get coated. They don't try to stick together again like the cheeses with the higher moisture content. So it like I said, it depends on the outcome you want and how much time you have. Yeah, you know, somebody here has 2 teenagers at home and 10 people. It's like a pre-graded would work just fine.
Right. Okay, well, you definitely have. I was looking at your website a little bit, and it looks pretty good. Real quick, one other question. Do you? Because I've heard some people use this method when getting things out of the oven, and to me it sounds horrid. But do you recommend people move the oven rack when they take things out of the oven, or leave it in place? Because I've always left it in place because I want to know where my oven rack is. So I'm just curious.
Yeah. So again, it depends on what you're making. But let's say you're making a turkey, you're going to have to take one of those oven racks out.
Yeah.
You're not going to. Also, if you're broiling, you're going to want the rack closer to where your broiler is at. But for a lot of ovens, having it in the middle of the rack, they'll often direct you, which puts you in the middle. That's fine.
But I guess what I'm talking about though is like pulling the rack forward when you're going to take out the pan. I've heard some people been taught that method where they'll like literally move the oven rack, forward to get easier access to the pan, as opposed to just reaching in. If that makes sense.
I do that every time. That's how I taught my students how to do it. I mean, I used to reach in the oven and I'd get burns on my forearm, and they're no fun and they're not battle scars. They don't count for anything, but they hurt. So I am a big fan of it, especially if you can't see, but even if you can see. That's why those oven racks were made like that, where you can only pull it halfway out. There's like a safety mechanism where you'd really have to jerk hard to get past it.
And
that
Deborah,
way,
we have about 3 minutes left.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, pull it out. That
And-
way you're pulling the food out to you. You put it on the top, and then you take the pan and you put it back on the rack and push it back in the oven. And the only thing that's gone in your oven are your fingertips, wearing your heat gloves, and you're in no danger of burning yourself.
You do have Jeff back with a raised hand, and we have less than 3 minutes.
Okay, my question is simple. So when you cook steak or meat, I heard there's a finger technique to determine if the meat is rare or well done. And I heard you use your thumb and your index finger, that level of softness is rare, and your thumb and your pinky is well done. Is that true?
Cooks at steaks houses supposedly can do that. I don't have that type of sensitivity or confidence in my sensitivity. So meat at different temperatures, medium rare is probably somewhere around 130. Well done is going to be more towards 150, 160. I'm going to count on my talking thermometer every time just to be sure. But you can do it any way you want. Yep.
How do you know the thermometer is in the center of the meat? That's what I worry about, that I'm missing where the thermometer really needs to be to measure that temperature accurately.
Yeah, it's got to be in the thickest part of the meat, closest to the bone if you're cooking poultry. But if you're cooking a steak, they're not usually more than an inch thick. So you just go down and then just come up about a half an inch. Part of it's an educated guess. It's not perfect, but you're going to know if you pull it up too high, it's going to be out of the steak. So it's a little bit of technique and it's a little bit of practice.
Great. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's all of your raised hands, and you have about 2 minutes. Oops, are you hearing me?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I didn't hear that last part.
Okay, can you hear me right now?
I can.
Okay, we have about 2 minutes, and there are no other raised hands.
Oh, okay. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this. What I would like to do, though, is if anyone has any ideas I don't want to repeat myself. I'm going to do this once a month at this date and time. Do you have any subjects that you'd like me to talk in more detail when I open the discussion group next month?
How about tips and tricks for barbecuing?
Ho ho, one of my favorites. We'll start out with that. And actually, at theblindkitchen.com, we have a grilling collection that has 10 adaptive tools for cooks with vision loss that want to grill. It's one of my favorite collections. But what I'll do is I'll open up and talk about those tools that are in that collection. And one of them is that talking thermometer.
Great.
All right. Well, thank you, Deborah.
It was my pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for showing up. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Deborah. Really appreciate it.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
Holly will close the room.
Okay.